dominance from the New Deal onward for almost half a century, Southern whites, blue-collar laborers from Midwestern cities, were deserting them for the Republican Party. Carter had held things together in 1976 because he was a Southerner who won large swaths of that region, but also appealed to an increasingly liberal party activist base. But the 1980s would be the age of Reagan, and the 1990s would bring in Republican control of Congress after decades of Democratic supremacy. Carter still blamed his loss to Reagan in 1980 in large part on Kennedy's defiant challenge to his reelection bid. He regretted not having done more to prevent it. "The first year I was in office, Kennedy was my best supporter in the whole Congress," he said. "And when I saw that that was changing, particularly late in '78, I believe, I should have gone out of my way. I could have gone out of my way to accommodate him." In particular, Carter wished he'd granted Kennedy's request to appoint Archibald Cox, the former Solicitor General fired by former President Nixon in a dramatic showdown over a subpoena of Nixon's Oval Office recordings, to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. "I think it meant a lot to him in retrospect," Carter said. "I didn't do it, and I think if I had appointed that judge, Kennedy probably wouldn't have run." The former president was overestimating the impact that such a gesture would have had, and underestimating the degree to which his and Kennedy's passions, in addition to forces well beyond their control, had drawn them into conflict. He had relished the chance to take Kennedy on. He wanted to whip his ass, as he said publicly at the time. Kennedy was his polar opposite, a man of great appetites who struggled to exercise personal discipline, born into privilege, power, and wealth. Carter, who by sheer self-discipline and determination willed himself from a childhood on a southwest Georgia farm to greatness, despised Kennedy for being born on third base. Carter had anticipated a showdown with Kennedy for years before Kennedy even knew who he was. And Carter was no dummy. He knew that Kennedy's challenge was driven by forces beyond Teddy's control, by the ghosts of his demanding father and his martyred brothers. "I really relished Kennedy's support," Carter told me. "But then he decided, I don't know why, I think he felt that he in a way deserved to be president, that I didn't. Maybe inspired by his own family members, you need to carry on the Kennedy heritage. And since Bobby and John had been assassinated, I could see how he would be looked on as heir apparent." He paused, sighed, and said, "Anyway, he changed." 2 months after I interviewed Carter in Atlanta, I traveled to Boston to attend the opening ceremony of the Edward M. Kennedy Institute. The center was the equivalent in size, prestige, and sheer ambition of a presidential library. Kennedy had passed away only 5.5 years earlier. It had taken 16 years after JFK's death before his library opened, due to cost overruns and site changes. Bobby Kennedy's children were angry that no such building existed in their father's memory, but Bobby did not have any advocates in his death like Teddy's widow, his second wife, Victoria Reggie Kennedy. Vicky, a Washington attorney and a deft political operator, had seen to it that the taxpayers pitched in $38 million to the $78 million project. She had also assumed impressive control over Kennedy's legacy. Kennedy's own sons told me they had to check with her before talking to me. Under Vicky's hawk-eyed direction, the massive Kennedy Institute, which included a full-size replica of the U.S. Senate chamber to be used for mock sessions to educate students, aspired to honor Teddy with as much grandeur as former presidents. There is a replica of Teddy's Capitol Hill office and a room devoted to looking back over his life and career. Vicky said that Teddy had once told her that everybody knew about the presidency and each president got a library, but that few people knew about the Senate, and this could change that. The dedication ceremony took place on a freezing, cold, gray March morning. The weather and some very bad planning on the part of the organizers squelched the celebratory mood. Most attendees thought the event would be held in a heated tent and did not wear coats. But the tent walls were removed in some places and pulled back in others. Massive heaters blasted hot air that quickly dissipated. The temperature was in the low 30s, and snow flurries came and went. People had to be in their chairs for 90 minutes before the event started.